Before any infrastructure can be built, there first needs to be construction sites. At construction sites, there's actually four main hazards that happen. Includes falling, electrocution, getting stuck in between objects, and getting struck by objects. But despite these somewhat obvious hazards that exist, are there other ones there that are not so obvious? What about like the hard hat workers that work at these places? How hard are their hats? Anyways, without further ado, let's grab a blanket, turn off your lights for true scary horror stories that happened at these sites. I own the construction site. I can show you around. When I was about 5 years old, my brother and I lived in a 4-unit apartment complex. We lived in the top right unit, and our friend, who was 7 years old, also my older brother's age, lived in the bottom left. Our complex sat on a small hill mound and was about 40 to 50 feet behind this was about 100 or more townhomes being built at the same time. The three of us were fascinated by the construction site. We'd always be playing inside the construction sites anytime workers weren't around. We were in there a lot. I was probably too young, but for some reason, my parents allowed it. We were allowed to play unsupervised a lot, and were allowed to stay in our yard after it got dark. On a summer night, at about 9 p.m., the three of us were outside running around in our yard. We noticed a white toaster van pull up, and a man comes out and calls us to him. He looked like a really creepy guy. He was tall and thin, with a faded white shirt, big glasses, and a thin blonde mustache. I don't remember what he said to make us come up to him. Once we were close, he asked us if we liked the construction sites back there. We told him we did. He then said, "I own the construction sites. Would you guys like to come with me and I can show you around the sites?" That sounded really awesome to all of us. He opens the back door of the van and tells us to get in and he'll drive us to the sites. Me and the girl for some reason got in the back of the van. The guy tried to close the door, but my older brother held it open and told us we should ask our parents. He pulls me out of the van by my arm and the girl comes out too. The creep actually lets us go and waited for us to come back. We tell our parents and my dad and her dad come out. My dad runs to the truck and the guy speeds off. The police are called, but they could never find out whoever it was. I'm so thankful for my brother. I don't know what would have happened if he didn't pull me out of the van. I always wonder who the guy was and what he wanted to do. Was he arrested? Did he stop trying after this? What did he want to do anyways? I really wish I could know. It just bothers me not knowing. Some shortcuts aren't worth it. Here's my short long-time reader first-time poster introduction, and then I'll jump straight to the story. I've always looked young for my age, so at this point, I usually pass for 9 or 10 years old. At 26, I often get mistaken for a late high school or college student. That makes the story extra weird. When I was in middle school, I used to take the bus home every afternoon. 2 or 3 other girls and I would all walk together, since our houses were quite close. We had a few shortcuts through the neighborhood, but our most frequent was through a construction site and a plant nursery. The first year it was pretty standard. We'd slip through an opening in the fence and cross the open area of the site, then duck between the fence and a line of trees that formed a sort of tunnel to the nursery. Once we slid under the nursery's fence, or walked through their gate, they weren't great at keeping it locked. We were pretty much in our part of the neighborhood, and we'd go our separate ways. The first week of 8th grade, when I was 13 though, the construction site changed. We made it through the gate and headed over to the trees, but what we found behind them was bizarre. Someone had plastered graphic porn magazine pages all over the fence, the ground, even pasted them on the trees. We were standing in the middle of a vortex of porn. Suffice it to say, as tween girls in 2001, we hadn't had a whole lot of exposure to the hardcore smut lining our usual route home. We giggled at the pictures, gaped at the dildos, and hustled through the nursery. It was a unanimous decision not to take that shortcut anymore. A couple months later, I ended up being the only one getting off at my stop. I decided to cut through the construction site since it got out nearest to my house. I speedily passed the dirt clods and headed into the tunnel, which was now lined with new porn. I wasn't the most sexually informed kid, so I felt no need to linger, especially with a weird feeling I was starting to get behind those trees, like I wasn't alone. I moseyed along with an unwieldy backpack that slowed me down, and almost reached the gate to the nursery when I heard a deep, adult male voice from behind the porn-covered fence murmur, "See anything you like?" I froze for a heartbeat, then took off running. I had no desire to meet or respond to someone who'd hide behind a display and ask that question to young-looking 13-year-old girls. That day was one of the lucky ones when the gate was open, so I bolted through and into the nursery, then made a hasty exit and hurried home. I checked the entire way to see if anyone was following me, but it didn't seem like it. After that, I steered clear of the construction site, its tunnel of smut, and hopefully, whoever that voice belonged to. Why aren't you running? Hi, Reddit. This just happened to me about 20 minutes ago. I'm sitting in my dorm room safe and sound, but my heart is still racing, and I keep looking out my window every 5 minutes. Anyways, it's currently 5 a.m. I just got back from the library. I'm a sophomore in college, and it's getting close to final exam time. During final season, our library stays open 24 hours, so students have a place to study, etc. Tonight, I decided to utilize a 24-hour plan to finish a biology paper. It took me longer than I thought, but I got out of there around 4:45. My dorm is about a 5 to 8 minute walk from the library, but at 4 in the morning, everything is a hell of a lot more eerie. So, I start walking, and there's this huge spotlight that's shining down on a construction site. It's super creepy at night, but I've learned to just get over it. Anyways, I'm walking back, freezing my ass off when I hear the sound of shuffling feet. I turn around, and I see a dark figure. This person was out of the light being casted by the spotlight, so I couldn't see them. This freaked me out immediately, but I just kept going. I could see my dorm in the distance. As I'm rounding a corner, I hear the footsteps behind me pick up. I don't turn around, because there is someone approaching me. I'm the only one in the spotlight at this point, and the person coming at me is cast in the shadow. But I hear a deep, booming voice shout, "Why aren't you running?" This both confused and startled me, and I sped up, going out of my way to maneuver away from the person coming at me. The person behind me stepped into the light, but a black hood covered their face. I began sprinting to get to my dorm. I could hear their feet pounding along on the pavement behind me. "Run! Run!" They both whooped and shouted, laughing manically. I ran to my dorm, pulled open the door, and turned around to see the hooded guy standing right outside. I grabbed the door's handle and pulled it while he also pulled. We were playing tug of war with the door. My dorm has a small area where we swipe our ID badges so we can be let into the residence hall. This area is right inside the door, so it's like a very small enclosed area. So, while I struggled to keep the door shut with my left hand, I swiped my ID with my right, so it was easy to get to. The main door swung open and I jumped inside, slamming it behind me. The security locks went into effect, and the hooded guy was locked out. He was staring at me. Even though I couldn't see his eyes, I could feel them on me. We awkwardly stared at each other for about 30 seconds before I jumped on the elevator and got the fuck out of there. But here I am, about 20 minutes later, still creeped out. I'm hoping it was just some frat guys playing around, but I'm assuming it's homeless people. Around this time of year, the homeless really seem to loiter around campus more. I don't know why. Also, to anyone who will be attending college, lanyards are not as bad as some will say. They certainly helped me a lot tonight. Thanks for reading. No one helped. I apologize for any grammar mistakes since English is not my native language. This story took place about 2 years ago, but it haunts me to this very day. Around 4 years ago, quite a lot of problems happened in my family. Sickness, trials, threats, etc. 6 years ago, I found out I was adopted. The very same people who I thought loved me slowly turned against me when I inherited quite a lot of wealth from my not biological grandfather. They said I wasn't part of the family, not their blood, and so I shouldn't get anything. My grandfather thought it differently, so he left me everything he had. They did not like that at all. I won houses and grounds and lost almost every person I ever loved because they stopped loving me. I wonder if they ever did to begin with. It was 2014, and after years of no contact with any of my cousins, one of them came home from Greece. His parents were the only ones who remained neutral in all those years. When he contacted me, I didn't know how to behave. I didn't know if I could trust him. I was 18 at the time, 5'1" and on the underweight side. He was a 6'1" fit male, 22 years old. I had only met him once before during a wedding, so he was basically a stranger to me. Anyways, he was in Alb, alone and with no friends. I wanted so badly to have a good relationship with a cousin again, so I went along with it. He would call to hang out. Sometimes we'd go for a drink or a pizza. He would always invite me to his house, but the fact that we would be alone there made me uneasy. So I always made him come to mine, where I lived with my mother and grandmother. We would cook together, solve puzzles, and talk about stuff that we both liked. I was happy. I thought I finally regained a little bit of normality. It lasted less than a week. I don't know what made me uneasy around him. The fact that I didn't know if he knew the truth about me, the way he started talking to me, or the dark way those bright blue eyes started looking at me. The unease only grew stronger in time. After years of no contact, I didn't know what was normal behavior between cousins anymore. I tried talking to my friends about it. They thought his behavior was funny and romantic, said I was reading too much into it, so I stopped talking about it and blamed it all on myself. He started moving his chair when we were out, sitting very close to me, always made sure that his knees would touch mine, his arm over my shoulders. It never mattered to him that I tried to move away. My happiness was replaced by fear, and I never managed to speak out and tell him to stop it. It was getting worse with each passing day. I could see it. I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't trying to hide it anymore. He didn't see me the way you look at a friend. He looked at me the way a man looks at a woman, and under his stare I felt naked. I felt like prey. That night, when he snapped, he had insisted to go to his house. I refused. My mistake was agreeing to go out for a drink instead. The atmosphere was so tense, even the waiter noticed it. We finished our drink and headed home, to mine, and this time he was completely different. He grabbed me by the arm and basically dragged me for half an hour. I was humiliated. Everyone on the street was looking at me, struggling to walk beside him. When we got to my neighborhood, it was already dark outside, and he just lost it. He picked me up and went straight into a construction site. There was this type of hole where they had thrown broken glass and large stones. He kept me straight on top of it, said if I tried to get away from him again, he would drop me there, ordered me to say he was stronger, that he could do whatever he wanted, like that was ever in question. Every time I didn't say what he wanted, he would lower me into the hole more and more, deeper and deeper. When he got bored of scaring and intimidating the hell out of me, he just took me to a trash can this time, asked where I preferred to be dropped, on the glass or on the trash, chose the second, and barely managed to fall out of it and onto the ground. He thought it was very funny. grabbed my arm again and took me home. When we got there, I wanted to tell my mother everything, but realized I shouldn't. She had lost a lot simply from just loving me, and I didn't want her to go through hell for me again, so I put on my best smile and lied. The psycho didn't leave though. He came in for a late dinner, and while I was cooking, he was searching for something in my room. I know because I caught him there, my flies opened, looking through my drawings. When he saw me, he wasn't ashamed though. He gave me this look that I think I won't be able to forget for the rest of my life. It was purely evil. He had discovered a secret of mine through my drawings. My self-harming. He had seen the scars on my wrist, but now he knew exactly how they got there, and he was beyond happy about it. He was happy that I was crazy, so he said he couldn't wait to see what I was going to do to myself after that day, if I would just bleed to death. I left the room. He ate the dinner I cooked, congratulated me on it, and left after saying goodbye to my mother and giving me a hug that seemed like he was trying to break my bones. After that day, he called again a lot of times. I didn't answer. Blocked him from Facebook also. I never said a word to my mother about any of it, but I wasn't the same since then. I couldn't even sleep out of fear I wake up to find him in my room. Again. Things have gotten better after 2 months. He stopped calling and went back to Greece, and I started breathing normally again. I have yet to learn how not to panic when someone touches my arm, how not to remember every detail of that night, but I stopped cutting. I won't give him that satisfaction, and now if I ever meet with him again, I am ready to make him pay, because I cannot forgive, and I cannot forget. Dear cousin, I will make sure I appear in your nightmares just as much as you have appeared in mine. Until we meet again. The construction workers. Okay, I have been engrossed in the subreddit, and I decided to share a creepy experience with you guys. I have plenty more to share if you would like. A bit of backstory. I'm a 17-year-old male living in New South Wales, Australia. I'm half Asian and in a way female looking. I'm around average height and very thin. I have what you would call emos hair. This coming into play later on. So this happened about 2 days ago. I live in a typical Australian suburb. Nothing out of the ordinary in Australia. Where I live, there's a lot of heavily wooded areas, as well as very swampy areas. So here it goes. Me, in all my wisdom, decided to go for a walk. The area I went to isn't frequently traveled to, as it's very rural. For the city I live in, it is where the new housing estates are getting built. I love this area as it is so photogenic and quiet. Now I'm walking along listening to music. It's about 40-ish minutes from my house. You have to go through a lot of bushland. I should mention my neighborhood's backs onto an industrial estate, which is in decline. I walk there, it's quite a normal day, until I see a bunch of what look like construction workers, talking to each other occasionally, glancing at me. I thought nothing of it, and kept on my merry way. Now this area, my safe haven, is on the fringe of both what used to be an industry and new houses. Where I always sat and looked into the distance there was always a fence. I never went past it because of the barbed wire on top of it. That day, I felt adventurous, and saw that there was a gap in the fence that led beyond. I cheeked on the workers in case they saw me they were gone. So I went through. This is where it began. I walked for a solid 7 minutes into the area. When I sat in the grass, it's about up to my waist tall, to admire the view, when I heard in a male's voice, "Where the fuck did it get to?" I was freaked out a little, as this was a reserve, and I thought I was caught, so I dashed into taller grass. Another male said, "We know you're here. Come out. You're not in trouble." I was in full panic mode. Like, who would say that to someone, especially a stranger? I glanced at the people calling out for me, and no surprise, they were the workers from the site. I assumed they must have followed me. "Come on out, little rabbit. He won't hurt you." "Well, not much," said a raspy female-sounding voice. I glanced at these workers. One had a roll of duct tape, another rope, and the female had a large wrench. I was taught as a kid how to get away from strangers in cars, but nothing of this friggin' caliber. I grabbed a piece of large sandstone from the ground. It's light and everywhere where I live. I hurl it into grass far away from me. They go running, stupid fucktards, I thought to myself. I book it through the long grass and climb the fence into the industrial estates. As I'm over the fence, I see the workers on top of the hill, pointing at me. They leg it towards me, yelling, "Oi, come back here!" I proceed to nope the hell out of there and back to my house. I haven't seen these people since, but what frightens me is that I'm pretty sure they thought I was a girl. I don't know what their intentions were, but they weren't good at all. So, creepy, obviously fake workmen, let's not meet again.